here's the thing about mission, right? We talk about vocation a lot in the Catholic Church, and that's very important. There's a mission aspect to that. But I want to talk specifically about mission. When God commissions you, he gives you a task, a great undertaking to do, and you have to do it. Well, you don't have to do it, but you should do it. Carrying your cross. I talked about it on Sunday. I'm not going to talk about it again. Mission. Okay? And mission is very simple, has three parts. Mission has three parts. And those parts are very clearly, very obviously shown in the Gospels. We see it in the Transfiguration, the Crucifixion, and the Resurrection. Because those are the three elements of Jesus' mission. You could also lop in there baptism for Jesus as that Transfiguration moment. Because Transfiguration is just really a reiteration of the baptism that happened earlier. But just so that everyone else can see what happened at baptism. And what happens at baptism to Christians. And so, here's the thing, right? The first thing that happens in any mission is you are transformed, right? God calls you to a mission, to something that you need to do. Some great task, or it could be a little task, the mission that he calls you to. Before he sends you out, he transforms you, right? He makes you new. He gives you the abilities and the faculties that you need to carry out the mission, right? This has a lot to do with spiritual gifts, right? Because whenever you're given a mission, God also gives you the abilities, literally, to carry out that mission, right? If you're going to become a teacher, work at a summer camp or do something where you have to teach somebody, he's going to give you the ability to teach, right? Ability to teach the wisdom from God. And that's a ability that requires a charism to do really, really well. And if he's calling you to that mission, he's going to give you that charism. If he's calling you to work at a homeless shelter, he's going to give you a gift for mercy, for compassion, for service. Those are things that he's going to give you to equip you for the mission. And you'll notice this as you grow in life. You'll have charisms, like you have spiritual gifts at one point that you need for the mission you're doing at that time. And then that'll change, and you'll have spiritual gifts for a different mission. Which is cool, for sure. Of course, there are some of those gifts that just stay all the time. There are those gifts that stay with you constantly. Those gifts that are really part of your identity as a Catholic. Right? I don't think I'll ever not have the gift of wisdom, because all the missions that God has called me to in my life, I've always needed to have that gift. Especially given how young I've been for the missions I've been called to, I've needed to have some ability from God, like not of my own, to be able to minister to people the wisdom that comes from God. If I didn't have that, I'd be, up the creek without a paddle, as you might say. That's a pretty old saying, but I'll throw it in there just to make myself look like more of a boomer. But this is the what you need, right? You need gifts from God to be able to do these things. And that's part of the reason why it doesn't matter how young you are, God is constantly calling you to mission. He constantly wants to transform you. He constantly wants you to say yes to the mission that he has for you, so he can transform you and use you and build you up and make you holier and make you better. Make you a better version of yourself, as Matthew Kelly would say. And so that first thing that happens is transformation. And so we see this, and I just had my child's baptism on Saturday, but you see this in the transformation that takes place. And the transformation is such a beautiful thing. It's so beautiful. For anybody who's ever been transformed by the love of God before, you understand how beautiful this moment is, where God calls you to himself. He calls you to an amazing and beautiful mission. And then he equips you. You feel so good. You feel like, oh, I can actually do this. God has given me the abilities I need to do this. I'm so excited. Let's go and let's do it. Right? Which is why right after that is when the crucifixion happens. And we see this again in the gospel narrative, where right after the transformation, right after the transfiguration, that's the beginning of the crucifixion narrative. It happens right after the transfiguration. Right? The transfiguration, where you get the crucifixion happens, where you're undertaking the mission, undertaking your cross, doing the mission. And the mission is really, really hard, usually. If God is calling you to a mission, it's going to require crucifixion, right? Not literal crucifixion, but a spiritual crucifixion where you allow yourself to be crucified. You carry the cross, and you use the gifts that God has equipped with you with to do them. And I've found in my life, when I've been called to a mission, and I've done the mission that God has called me to, even though I'm being crucified, I can still find joy in the suffering. I can still find happiness. I still feel like I can do it. There's never a point where I feel like I'm alone. as long as I'm doing this mission that God has called me to do. He's always there helping me. That doesn't make it not hard. It just makes it so that you know that you're on the right path and that what you're doing is what you should be doing. And just because it's hard doesn't mean that you should be doing something else. Just because a path is hard does not mean it's the one that God doesn't. It's not the one that God wants you to take. The easy path is often the way of the devil, as we heard in Sunday's reading, and I keep hitting on this, right? When Peter suggests the easy path, Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan," because he was trying to distract him from his mission, trying to tempt him to give up his mission. Peter didn't know that that's what he was doing, but Jesus does. And all of the attacks that the devil makes at Jesus in the gospel narrative is about this: give up your mission. It's too hard. And so this crucifixion happens. And I mean, nobody really looks at the crucifixion that Jesus went through and thinks, "I want to do that," because it's pretty gruesome and detailed, and it's tough. It's a tough road. But you want the crucifixion because without the crucifixion, you can't ever have the resurrection. And the resurrection is so great and so important and so beautiful and so amazing. And that's the fulfillment that comes after. That's the success of your mission. That's when you've gone and you've done the work, you've worked hard, you did what God asked you to do. And then there's the resurrection where finally your labors bear fruit. Right? And I've got to see this many times too, where I went and I did a mission that God wanted me to do, and then it bore amazing fruit that I never could have imagined before the mission began. Right? There was that transformation, and during the crucifixion, it's tough, and you don't see any end to it, and you don't see that there's going to be any road. But then at the end, you get this amazing fruit, and you're like, wow, I didn't do that. God did that, but I was here. I was a part of this. I allowed God to work through me, and something amazing happened. And that's what you're really ultimately working for. And I think the tough thing about teaching mission to teens, I'm talking to my teens specifically who are listening to this video, right? We tell you about the transformation. We tell you about the crucifixion. We don't really give you examples of the resurrection. We don't really explain to you the resurrection. We don't tell you that ending fulfillment, right? That ending, at the end of the mission, there's something great and amazing that is waiting for you, that God wants you to have. But it's at the end. And our teens nowadays are so focused on the now, right? What do I want right now? What do I want to do right now? Instant gratification. Like, I want this now. I'm going to do this now. That's how I'm going to live my life. But that's not the way that God wants you to live it, right? Because the greatest gifts, the greatest fruit, the greatest fulfillment, the greatest joy and happiness in life comes after the crucifixion, comes after the hard work, the labor, the suffering. It's not worth it. You won't feel the fulfillment unless you go through the suffering first. It's not worth it. It won't ever be the same. We get this instant gratification that makes us think that this is pleasure, this is desire, this is what we want. You have no idea what true happiness is until you've done a mission that God has asked you to do. And I'm saying that from experience. Because I've been that teenager, right, with the instant gratification and all these things, all these distractions. But then once I said yes to a mission from God and went and did it, regardless of how hard it was, my life was never the same. Because I knew the truth. I knew that at the end, there is this amazing joy and happiness that doesn't leave. It stays. It's lasting. Joy and happiness is that glimpse of heaven, right? That everlasting joy and happiness. It's not the kind of happiness that fades away. The only thing that can take it away is sin. But if you're going to confession and doing all the things, doing the sacraments, nobody can take that joy away from you. Even in the darkest moments, that joy is still there. And so this is what the point that I want to make to you is this. Is mission difficult? Yes. But is it worth it? 100 times yes. 100 times yes. And so the next time that God asks you to say yes to him, wants to transform you and give you a mission, say yes. It takes a lot of bravery and courage, but say yes. Because once you do, and God changes you and changes your life forever, you'll never look back at what your life was before. You only have things to look forward to. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.